Merry Christmas everyone, and welcome back to my channel, or more realistically, it'll be Boxing Day by the time this is actually uploaded, but Merry Christmas anyway. Normally I try to dress up a little bit more for my videos and not look as quarantine chic as I normally do, but today
Sean, it's Christmas.
Today we're going to be talking about Wonder Woman 1984, now available on HBO Max, starring Gal Gadot, Chris Pine, Pedro Pascal, and Kristen Wiig, directed by Patty Jenkins and co-written by Patty Jenkins, Jeff Johns, and Dave Callahan. Yikes. We're going to start with the spoiler-free review and then pretty quickly move to the spoilers because I've got a lot to say and I kind of just want to give my full and honest opinion. So before I get too deep into my feelings on this movie, I just want to give a really quick summation of how I felt about the first one. The first Wonder Woman, I think, had amazing first and second acts and then kind of crapped the bed on the third act. But the strength of the second one, really pulled the whole movie in for me. There were other things, I didn't really like the opening and closing narration. I thought there was a little bit of a plot hole with humanity is inherently flawed but still worth redeeming, and then they undercut that by having everyone drop their weapons when Ares died. But again, that second act was so strong. That no man's land scene, I forgave so many sins for that, because when that music hit, I was crying. I was like, ooh, yes, girl power, that it hit so well. But to be honest, I haven't really rewatched it since I saw it. I remember enjoying it. I still watch clips of it and really enjoy it, but I haven't really felt compelled to rewatch it. My probably favorite DCEU movies right now would be Shazam and Birds of Prey, which came out earlier this year and is better than this. I'm gonna start with this movie is so freaking long. So long. It is 2.5 hours long and it feels like every single minute is dragging. I paused the movie to see how much time was left no less than 5 times. I kept thinking, this movie has to be ending soon and there'd be an hour and a half left. The first hour, basically nothing happens. You could cut most of the first act and nothing in the movie would really change. The movie starts with a 10-minute scene of younger Diana and Themyscira, and I don't know who that scene was for. I don't know narratively what it accomplished. At the end, Diana is given a pretty trite VeggieTales message that doesn't really play into the rest of the film in any meaningful way. I'll go into more specifics in the spoiler part of my review, but overall it just felt like that entire 10 minutes could have been cut, but that people really liked the young Diana scenes in the first film, so they felt compelled to do it again. What they should have done with that 10 minutes is establish who Diana has been and what she's been doing as a hero since the first film. It's now 1984, the last film ended in 1920-ish? It's been 60 years, and instead of taking that time, that introductory 10 minutes to let us know who she's been and how she's grown, they flash back to her as a child. It doesn't impact the story. Instead, we just start off and she has a job and she's doing Wonder Woman things, but we don't know anything about her past. Later on, she makes it clear that she feels very isolated, she feels alone, and that's why she's still longing for this memory of Steve Trevor, but has she made no other friends? When you have 2.5 hours of movie, it feels like they should be using that time to really develop their characters, and instead they give you kind of these shallow emotions of this character is happy, so we're gonna have this long drawn out scene of them being happy, and it's bro, I got it. This character is sad, long drawn out, but it's all very present. You don't get the backstory that would make those present emotions feel any deeper or stronger. For example, Pedro Pascal plays Maxwell Lord, who is basically the main antagonist in the film, and he doesn't get any backstory until literally 15 minutes before the end of the movie. Actually, maybe 10. And it is told in about 2 minutes of flashback scenes with very little sound. 2.5 hours of movie, 2 minutes of flashback for our main villain. Our other villain is played by Kristen Wiig as Cheetah, and she's fine. She gives, an entertaining performance. She's a good actress. She engages you when you're on screen, but she's a fairly bland villain. She kind of joins the ranks of people who wear glasses and have messy curly hair, so they're losers and people don't really like them, so then the minute they get powers they go buck wild. but it's been done before. Better, sometimes worse. But it's not a very unique villain origin story. And Cheetah in the comics gets blessed by a cheetah god, and I think drinks someone's blood. Like, that's so much more interesting. I mean, I'm not an expert, but from what this wiki says, we could have gotten a much more interesting origin story for Cheetah than no one wanted to go to happy hour with her and now she's mad. I can't really explain how Steve Trevor comes back without going into spoiler territory, but obviously from the trailers, from the stills, we know he's back. That's fine. I actually think Chris Pine and Gal Gadot had some of the best chemistry, not just for the DCU, but in superhero movies. They tend to be pretty, like, sexless and tensionless. You're just kind of told that these two characters are romantic interest. I actually thought Gal Gadot and Chris Pine played very well off each other in the first movie. I believed their romance developing. It was fast, but, like, I believed it. But I don't believe that she's been pining for this man for 60 years. It didn't sell that for me. I believe the relationship in the first movie when he was the first man she'd ever met and he looks like Chris Pine, sure. But now it's been 60 years that she's ostensibly been in the human world, and we don't, that's it. That's the only man she's ever talked to. It doesn't seem like she's made any real friends since then. It's just, he's the only one. That's her only happiness. And I would hope Wonder Woman, Diana Prince, would be far more complex than to hang on to the memory of a man for 60 years without moving on. Steve Rogers did that, but for 70 of the years, he was frozen in ice. He has an excuse. Without getting into too many spoilers, I can't explain this sentence, but it felt like Aladdin fanfiction in the weirdest way. It felt like someone watched Return of Jafar and was like, I can play with that a little, which kind of gives you a hint of what the plot turns out to be. Wonder Woman has the best score, the best theme of, I think, any of the modern heroes, and they use it wrong. I'm not a professional sound engineer. I don't compose for a living, but they use one kind of lighter, fluffier version of her theme where I go, those are the notes, but it doesn't have that, like, doesn't have that hard rock sound that made you go, holy crap, this is an entrance. Got rid of that. And then when they finally used it as we originally heard it, it's for about 15 seconds and against Cheetah in a not very interesting scene. How do you waste the best score any DC superhero has? This whole movie just felt like wasting potential. They had a very good Wonder Woman in Gal Gadot. Is she an incredible actress? No, not particularly, but I think she plays the part well enough. She has the charm, she has the, badassness to sell it. They don't build her up, they don't push her in any real direction. She spends most of the movie pretty straight-faced or crying over a man, which is very not interesting. It's not engaging, and it is not worth 2.5 hours of my time. Kristen Wiig, again, a good actress, but not given much to work with. Pedro Pascal trying his best to work with a fairly shallow premise, but he is giving as much emotional range as he can to a character who doesn't have enough backstory. I did forget to do my little emoji reviews for Soul, but I will remember it for this movie, and they're looking like this. I'm not a fan. Alright, so now we're here. Spoilers, they're coming, they're here. I don't even know where to start. This thing was so boring. I was bored. Why was I so bored during this movie? Who thought that I wanted to just watch them, like, walk around? Actually, I'm lying a little bit. As a DC resident, I kept being like, hey, I know that place. But if you weren't from DC or been in DC, I'm assuming no one enjoyed their long strolls around DC and being like, oh, look, the Green Line. Like, I'm assuming that's a very niche appeal. And even as someone who was enjoying that to some degree, they could have cut it from the movie. That would have been fine. I didn't need to see that. When they went up into the jet and then they realized, oh my god, it's 4th of July, let's fly through. It's like, where's your sense of urgency? They figure out that there's this magic stone that is granting wishes, brought Steve Trevor back from the dead. Maxwell Lord clearly was working with some, black market sources to acquire this stone. He's now come into a bunch of oil, a bunch of suspicious happenings are occurring, and it's just this long scene of them flying through some fireworks. It's a war, man, hurry up! It's not war, but I wish it was. Wonder Woman, the first one, had some urgency. There was still this wonderful sense, fish out of water, her seeing ice cream and babies and genuine excitement. She does a little shopping, fashion montage. Love it. But at least there was places to be, things to do. This movie felt like it had all the time in the world, which it did, because it's 2.5 hours long. But I don't have all the time in the world, and I didn't want to spend that much time on them walking around. Also, I watched Infinity War and spent the entire movie going, Wanda, please kill your robot boyfriend. Please kill him. We gotta get rid of this Infinity Stone. And then she was sad about it, and I didn't care. And now in this movie, please get rid of your magic boyfriend. You don't have any superpowers. You need to go up against the magic genie man. I'm sad. Can't I have this one thing? I don't care. Doesn't work. I'm sorry, but when you put the fate of the world against your boyfriend, he loses every time. And I don't think, in both cases, with Vision and Wanda for sure, and now with Steve and Diana, I'm not invested enough in their relationship for this to be wrenching for me. I see how for her it's a sad deal, but he's been dead for 60 years, so, chop chop, get rid of him. I mentioned the intro narration in the non-spoiler part of my review. I believe at the end of it, she learns not to win through cheating, and that's the big message. Before even that scene, Diana has something about, some lessons can't be learned until you're through them, or something like that. What lesson did she learn in this movie? Not to cheat? I guess, is Steve Trevor cheating? Is wishing for him back cheating? Because the person who cheated is Maxwell Lord. Like, Diana really didn't. There was no part of the film where she has to go through, sneaky or subversive means and has to, reckon with the consequences of her actions. Except for Steve, which was, again, an accident, really. Yeah, she didn't want to give him up. But I wouldn't say that was cheating or indicative of her character. That was just a happy accident that she wished on something she didn't know would actually grant her wish. At one point in the movie, Diana is crying, in a wig, by the way. I don't know if anyone else saw that. But that scene where she's crying and about to renounce her wish for Chris Pine, her hairline suddenly went from back here with a clear space between her circlet and her head to here. And I don't know, maybe that was in my head, but I'm assuming that was a reshoot because that looked quite wiggy. But there's a line where she says, can't I just have this one thing? You're all I want, can I have this one thing? And that line works for a character who's really suffering. You feel like they're giving up the one thing that makes them happy. But I guess aside from the obvious, they haven't shown that Wonder Woman is sad. They didn't spend time developing that. If they'd spent time, for example, if the first 10 minutes had focused on all of her friends, her new friends from World War I dying, her going to funeral after funeral after funeral, that was oh wow, that's sad. She's losing all her friends. If we get to see her thinking about her mother and her aunt and all of her friends in Themyscira that she's never allowed to see again, it's oh wow, she's alone and she's surrounded by people who can never really connect with her. Show her make a joke that no other human would get. Something that makes me feel like she's disconnected from the present world. Then Steve Trevor means something. Then this connection means something. Instead, it just seems like she refused to date another man. She seemed perfectly happy. Go out, go socialize. She went out for drinks with Kristen Wiig, and that went well. So what exactly was so important about Steve Trevor that she could not move on? This movie did not make it clear to me, and it did not hold my interest in that way. Since I mentioned cheetah, what the hell turned her into a cheetah? I showed the wiki earlier of the comics, so we kind of in the comics got a ridiculous but still an explanation for why she is furry and cat-shaped. In this movie, Cheetah wishes to be like Diana, and in doing so gets her strength and speed. Okay, cool. And then Maxwell Lord says he can basically help power her up by side swiping some extra wish exchanged in her direction. But in the movie, I'm pretty sure he says something like, give her strength or give her prowess, and then the next time we see her, she's a cat. Why is she a cat? And she's not even, like, I guess in the comics she's an archaeologist as well, but maybe if they'd made her particularly a zoologist, if they'd made her very cat-shaped, the only hint that she's going to become a cat is when she says, I want to become an apex predator. Is that just because she was wearing a fur coat? Like, there's no real precedent for her being into big cats or being into predators. Like, I don't know where that came from. She just turned into a cat. And we're just supposed to accept it. And of course, it's a superhero movie. You're supposed to, suspension of disbelief. But give me something. Give me a little bit. Give me a magic box, a wave, a particle, something that turned her into a giant cat. You can't just show her walking away from a pillar and then being a cat. It doesn't work like that. I never fully understood Pedro / Maxwell Lord's motivations in this movie. We see him granting wishes, then he keeps saying, like, I need more people, I need more wishes, can I get your congregation, and I'm gonna grant, and I kept wondering why. Like, they don't, clearly we see he can decide what he takes back from them when he grants their wish, but he never explained why he needed more, and then in the conversation with Cheetah, he says, oh, I can rebuild my body one organ at a time if I have to. But at this point, he's like, his erupted eye, he has nosebleeds, I think he had an ear bleed at one point, and it seems like he's constantly surrounded by people. There's even a scene where a random man is like, my cows, some guy, asked me what I wanted, and I said a barn. Take that dude's organs. Like, it seems like weird he was just in a constant state of deterioration until the point where he got on TV. And then he could finally get back to full health. But he was granting a lot of wishes. The guy who asked for a Porsche, steal his health. I didn't really understand why it took so long. If it was that simple, the solution was right there, it seems like something he could have done much earlier. Also, why did him getting on TV work? I know I was just talking about I'll suspend my disbelief if you give me some kind of reason, but they got really loosey-goosey with the definition of touching with those particles, because the particles are touching the technology, which therefore is touching the people? And I don't know about that one. I don't know. But somehow when he entered the particle thing and Wonder Woman is coming after him, she was just stopped by gale force winds that are surrounding him. The wind is coming from him granting wishes. It just turned into the end of Bruce Almighty. The third act of this movie was the end of Bruce Almighty. Like, what? And literally at the end, it's just like, we just have to rescind our wishes. The president of the United States, I realize that most presidents are like, yeah, more nukes, that's the solution. But I would hope that you'd realize, let's put more nukes closer and closer to the Soviet Union and just, I'm sure there'll be no consequences to that. The president of the United States asked his most fervent wish, and he was just like, yeah, I'm going to put a nuke like 3 feet from the Soviet Union border. I'm sure that'll go fine. Everyone makes a lot of goofy wishes in this, like the guy who jokingly says, oh, I wish for a coffee. But that makes sense. But when a really rich businessman is asking you, I will do whatever you want, and it's just so non-specific and short-sighted as I want to put a bunch of armed nukes close to the Soviet Union, is every character in this movie stupid? This isn't necessarily the fault of this movie, because I know that Patty Jenkins wasn't involved in the writing of Justice League. But in Justice League, when Batman is pushing Wonder Woman to like take control and be a leader, she says, I don't do that, I don't lead, I don't Wonder Woman anymore because I'm so sad about my boyfriend. And that felt stupid then. And when Patty Jenkins basically said, oh, I had nothing to do with that, we were, oof, thank God. She's not going to write a Wonder Woman who is listless and depressed and can't do anything without a man. We thought. And then she wrote the same Wonder Woman. So chronologically, it doesn't make any sense because it means that she was sad for 60 years, was still kind of doing Wonder Woman things, sad about a man, he came back, she lost him again. Maybe that's the logic, is that she got him back in 1984 and then lost him again, and then in 16 when Batman vs. Superman happened. No, not Batman vs. Superman. Justice League was 2018? I don't remember. But by the time that comes out, she's once again not being active. But we know she is because the movie ends with her flying. Which, oh my god, I can't believe I almost forgot that. She can fly now. And it's because he said it's all wind and what was it? Wind and angles or whatever he said. Steve Trevor said about flying. And then she was all like, got it. It's all she needed. What? If this movie just bounced back and forth between like a weird, sappy relationship drama and then an Aladdin spinoff and then just schlocky comic book nonsense. But because it was never all of those things. If it was schlocky comic book nonsense the entire time, it would be Aquaman. And Aquaman is at least fun. It's ridiculous, but it's fun. Venom, ridiculous, but fun. This wasn't even fun. I was just checking my phone. I had to fix my eyeliner because at one point I was sleeping a little bit. Like, if I had seen this in theaters after a few drinks in a really dark room, I might have caught a little nap. This was so disappointing. Okay, well, that got a little bit ranty towards the end, but thank you so much for bearing with me. If you'd like to see more, please like and subscribe. If you'd like to see any of my old reviews, please check out my old website, leahseesmovies.com. If you'd rather not do any of that, but you've watched all the way to the end, I still appreciate you. And that's all for now. Peace!